The gate they installed overnight trapped everyone except the man who owned the road beneath it. I realized something was wrong around 5:30 in the morning when I heard tires crunching across gravel outside my cabin long before sunrise. Usually the lakeside road stayed quiet that early except for fishermen towing aluminum boats toward the public launch ramp or delivery trucks heading into Silver Pines before the homeowners woke up. But this sounded different. Too many vehicles. Too much stopping and starting. I stepped onto my porch holding a cup of black coffee while cold lake fog drifted through the pine trees surrounding the cabin district. And there it was sitting across the entrance road like somebody trying to claim a border crossing overnight. A brand new black steel security gate stretched across Bennett Access Road, with bright reflective signs reading Private Community Entry Authorized Residents Only. Two white HOA SUVs sat parked beside it, while security contractors in neon jackets argued with a landscaping truck trapped outside the entrance. The smell of wet asphalt still hung in the morning air. They poured fresh concrete footings sometime after midnight. That part almost impressed me. Silver Pines HOA moved fast whenever they thought they could intimidate somebody before county paperwork caught up. I stood quietly on the porch listening to the electric gate motor hum every few seconds, while luxury homeowners lined up behind the checkpoint in expensive SUVs waiting for security badges to scan. Half the residents looked confused. The other half looked annoyed they had to stop at all. Nobody noticed me yet. That was normal. People living in Silver Pines rarely paid attention to the 15 old lake cabins sitting beyond the trees near the shoreline. According to the HOA, my property district damaged the luxury image of the community. Too rustic. Too old. Too working class. Funny considering my family built those cabins almost 40 years before Silver Pines existed. My grandfather cleared the original road by hand back when the entire lakeside area was just pine forest and muddy shoreline trails. The cabin district survived storms, recessions, and county rezoning battles long before wealthy retirees started building million-dollar homes around the lake pretending they discovered paradise first. Then I spotted Heather Calloway standing beside the new gate wearing a cream-colored trench coat and holding a clipboard like she was unveiling a luxury resort entrance instead of illegally blocking a county easement road before dawn. Even from 200 feet away, I could see that smile. HOA confidence. The kind built entirely on believing paperwork only matters when other people read it. She noticed me standing on the porch and immediately started walking toward the cabin district with two board members following behind her carrying folders and coffee cups. The security gate clicked shut behind them with a heavy metal sound echoing through the cold morning air. Somewhere farther down the shoreline, a loon called across the lake while fog rolled low over the water. Peaceful morning. Expensive mistake. My daughter Emma stepped out of cabin 7 pulling a flannel jacket over her shoulders while staring toward the new gate through the trees. Tell me they did not actually build that thing. I took another sip of coffee without answering right away. The fresh cedar smell from the cabins mixed with wet concrete drifting up from the entrance road below us. Looks permanent, I finally said. Emma squinted toward the checkpoint where frustrated delivery drivers now argued with HOA security staff beside a line of backed-up vehicles stretching almost half a mile toward the highway. Can they even do that? No, that answer came easily. Calmly. Because unlike Heather Calloway, I spent most of my life reading land surveys and county easement records before retiring from private surveying work 10 years earlier. I knew exactly where every property line around Silver Pines started and stopped. More importantly, I knew who owned the only legal access road leading into the entire subdivision. Me. Heather climbed the porch steps a minute later, smiling like somebody expecting applause. Good morning, Cole. Heather. She glanced around the cabin district with the same expression people use while discussing buildings. Scheduled for demolition. I wanted you to hear this directly from the board before rumors spread. Emma folded her arms immediately beside me. Heather ignored her completely. Effective today, Silver Pines HOA is assuming operational control over the Bennett Shoreline District as part of our Unified Community Expansion Initiative. I almost laughed into my coffee cup. Operational control. Amazing phrase. Expensive phrase too, once lawyers get involved. Heather handed me a folder full of printed HOA notices and architectural compliance demands stamped with bright blue community seals. The board voted unanimously last night, she continued. All cabin properties must now comply with Silver Pines community standards moving forward. I flipped through the paperwork slowly while sunlight started breaking through the pine trees behind her. New siding requirements. Exterior color mandates. Shoreline usage restrictions. Mandatory HOA integration assessments. She really believed this. That was the dangerous part. Heather Calloway genuinely thought putting fancy language on paper transformed family land into HOA property overnight. Emma looked furious beside me. You cannot annex private property because rich homeowners hate looking at cabins. Heather finally acknowledged her with a tight smile. Silver Pines is protecting long-term property values for the entire lake community. There it was. Always property values. Wealthy people use those words the same way medieval kings used divine right, as justification for everything. I looked past Heather toward the new security gate where another line of luxury SUVs waited impatiently beneath the morning fog, while construction workers tried explaining to angry residents why delivery trucks suddenly could not enter the subdivision without HOA authorization. The funny part was watching everybody assume the gate represented power. It did not. It represented leverage belonging to the wrong person. Heather stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. The board hopes you cooperate voluntarily, Cole. We would hate for this process to become difficult. I looked down at the fresh HOA paperwork in my hands before glancing toward the entrance road cutting through the pine trees below us. Bennett Access Road. 12 feet wide. County Easement District 73. Original deed holder Cole Bennett. Funny little detail, Silver Pines forgot researching before installing their shiny new security checkpoint across land they never legally controlled. I handed the folder back calmly. Heather, I said quietly, how much do you actually know about the road beneath your new gate? The smile disappeared from her face immediately. Good. Because what Heather Calloway did not understand, yet was simple. Every single homeowner trapped behind that luxury checkpoint depended entirely on my deed just to reach their front door. Heather Calloway stared at me for a few seconds after I mentioned the road deed, and for the first time since arriving at the cabin district, her confidence cracked slightly around the edges. Not enough for most people to notice. But I noticed. Surveyors spend years learning how tiny shifts reveal pressure beneath the surface. A quarter-inch movement on a property marker can destroy a $1 million land deal. Same thing with people. Emma leaned against the porch railing watching Heather carefully while morning fog drifted across the lake behind us. The cabins sat quiet beneath the pine trees except for the sound of distant SUV engines idling near the new security gate below. More vehicles kept backing up along the entrance road now. Contractors, delivery trucks, homeowners trying to leave for work. Silver Pines never handled inconvenience well. Heather recovered quickly and smiled again, though tighter this time. The road issue was already reviewed during the community expansion process. I almost admired the confidence required to say something that incorrect while standing on the property in question. Reviewed by who? I asked calmly. The HOA legal team. That answered everything. HOA lawyers love reviewing documents nobody else verifies afterward. Emma shook her head beside me. That is not how deed ownership works. Heather ignored her again and stepped closer, holding the folder against her chest like armor. Cole, Silver Pines invested millions developing this community. The cabin district sits directly in the center of our waterfront expansion plan. I looked out toward the shoreline, where sunlight finally started cutting through the fog above the lake. 15 old cabins stood scattered beneath towering pines along the waterline. Cedar siding faded silver with age. Metal roofs humming softly when rain rolled across the valley. Wooden docks built decades before luxury developers started selling waterfront dreams to retired dentists and software executives. My father built Cabin 3 himself after returning from Vietnam in 1974. I learned surveying measurements sitting beside him on that porch with graph paper spread across our knees while loons echoed across the lake at dusk. Heather saw outdated structures. I saw family history anchored into the shoreline long before Silver Pines existed on paper. Your expansion plan is not my emergency, I answered quietly. Her jaw tightened immediately. There it was again. That subtle shift people make when they realize money might not automatically solve the problem standing in front of them. Down near the entrance gate, a delivery truck laid on the horn long enough to echo through the trees. One of the security contractors waved angrily while homeowners started stepping out of luxury SUVs, trying to understand why traffic stopped completely on a Tuesday morning. The funny part was watching wealthy residents experience their first tiny taste of dependence. Silver Pines marketed exclusivity for years. Private community, controlled access, premium waterfront isolation. But the entire subdivision relied on one narrow access road cut through Bennett land 4 decades earlier, because county engineers determined the lakeside terrain made alternate routes unstable and prohibitively expensive. Nobody in the HOA seemed interested in remembering that detail until now. Heather followed my eyes toward the gate and lowered her voice slightly. Look, the board hoped this transition could stay professional. Professional would have involved reading county easement records before pouring concrete across my road at 2 in the morning. Emma almost smiled hearing that. Heather noticed. The road supports the Silver Pines community. No, I corrected calmly. The road belongs to the Bennett Easement District while Silver Pines operates through conditional county access authorization. Silence again. Wind moved through the pine branches overhead, carrying cold lake air and the faint smell of fresh concrete from the checkpoint below. Heather looked uncomfortable now. Good. Because conditional access authorization meant something very specific under county infrastructure law. Temporary usage rights. Not ownership. Not permanent control. Temporary legal permission revocable under easement enforcement review. Most residents never understood the difference because developers prefer selling certainty instead of technical realities hidden inside county maps. Heather tried one final push. The board voted unanimously. The board does not own the road. That landed harder. She looked past me toward the cabin district stretching quietly beside the shoreline. 15 cabins. 15 private deeds. 15 structures older than the entire gated community surrounding them. Silver Pines spent 3 years trying to pressure me into selling after luxury developers realized the cabin district interrupted their dream of a perfectly controlled waterfront image. First came friendly offers. Then architectural complaints. Then property value lectures. Last winter, the HOA even mailed notices claiming my fishing docks violated community aesthetic standards. I framed that letter in cabin 9 beside an original 1978 survey map showing Bennett Access Road extending directly through land the HOA now pretended to control. Funny decoration choice. Around 7:30, Emma pointed toward the entrance road. Looks like your gate is causing problems already. Heather turned immediately. A moving truck sat trapped sideways near the checkpoint, while several frustrated homeowners argued with security staff beside a line of backed-up vehicles stretching almost to the highway entrance. One resident in golf clothes pointed angrily toward the scanner system, while another waved a phone beside the locked gate. The electric motor kept opening halfway before, stopping again under traffic overload. Cheap system. Rushed installation. Predictable. Heather exhaled sharply before looking back at me. The board intends to move forward regardless. With what exactly? I asked. Claiming private cabins you do not own through a road easement you never legally acquired? Her silence answered that question better than words. Because beneath the luxury branding and HOA confidence sat a simple truth Silver Pines never bothered checking carefully enough. They built an entire gated community around infrastructure belonging to somebody they treated like an obstacle instead of a landowner. Emma crossed her arms while watching the traffic jam worsen below us. You should probably tell your residents the entrance road is privately deeded before county inspectors explain it publicly. Heather stared at her for a second before forcing another smile that looked more exhausted than confident now. Silver Pines legal counsel disagrees. I nodded slowly. Then your legal counsel should spend less time designing luxury gate systems and more time visiting the county archive basement. The breeze shifted again, carrying the sharp metallic sound of the security gate motor grinding under pressure below us. Then came shouting, louder this time. A utility truck trying to enter the subdivision for scheduled fiber line maintenance sat completely blocked outside the checkpoint, while homeowners piled up behind it. Heather glanced toward the chaos instinctively. That was the moment I knew she still did not understand the scale of the mistake yet. Because the gate was not protecting Silver Pines. It was proving exactly how vulnerable the entire subdivision truly was. And every minute that steel barrier remained across Bennett Access Road brought the HOA one step closer to discovering who actually controlled whether their luxury community stayed connected to the outside world at all. By 9 in the morning, the new gate already turned Silver Pines into a traffic experiment nobody wanted to participate in. The line of vehicles stretched all the way to County Route 16, while frustrated homeowners leaned on horns beneath towering pine trees that still smelled wet from the previous night's rain. Delivery vans sat trapped beside landscaping trucks, while contractors carrying ladders and toolboxes argued with private security guards hired by the HOA less than 12 hours earlier. Every few minutes the gate motor groaned open halfway before freezing again under scanner overload. Cheap electronics pretending to manage expensive lives. I stood near the shoreline beside Cabin 4 repairing an old dock cleat when Emma walked down the gravel path holding her phone. "You should probably see this." She turned the screen toward me. Silver Pines community message boards already exploded online. Residents complained about delayed deliveries, blocked service vehicles, and emergency access concerns, while Heather Calloway kept posting polished updates about enhanced community security integration. Funny phrase considering half the subdivision could barely leave for work anymore. I wiped lake water from my hands using an old shop rag while gulls drifted low above the shoreline. How many residents know the road is private? Emma shrugged. Apparently none. That did not surprise me. Developers avoid conversations about easement dependency whenever possible because homeowners paying $2 million for waterfront property prefer believing they own stability permanently. Nobody likes hearing their luxury subdivision operates through conditional access agreements tied to one old survey family that still owns the ground beneath the asphalt. Around 10:30, the first official HOA notice appeared taped directly onto the Cabin District mailbox cluster beside the shoreline trail. Bright blue paper. Heavy legal wording. Community compliance enforcement warning. Emma ripped it down before I even reached the post. These people are unbelievable. I took the paper calmly and read through the demands while pine needles drifted across the gravel road around us. Exterior paint restrictions. Dock redesign orders. Mandatory architectural reviews. Cabin signage violations. One section even demanded removal of non-compliant rustic shoreline structures negatively impacting premium lakefront continuity. I almost laughed reading that part. My grandfather built those cabins using timber hauled directly from the surrounding hills before Heather Calloway was born. The structures survived 40 winters beside this lake, while luxury HOA trends changed every 5 years like furniture catalogs. A black luxury SUV rolled slowly into the Cabin District just before noon, kicking dust across the gravel lane. Heather again, this time with 2 board members and a man carrying rolled architectural renderings beneath one arm. Probably another developer consultant pretending lakeside history becomes irrelevant once enough money enters the conversation. Emma muttered something under her breath while crossing her arms beside me. Heather stepped out smiling carefully like somebody trying to regain control after a difficult morning. "Cole," she said smoothly, "the board would like to offer a cooperative resolution before legal escalation becomes necessary." There it was. Threat language wrapped in suburban politeness. My favorite kind. I leaned against the dock railing while lake water moved softly beneath the boards. "Go ahead." The consultant unrolled a glossy development rendering across the hood of the SUV showing luxury townhomes, boutique waterfront shops, and expanded marina space directly where the 15 cabin properties currently stood. Not even subtle anymore. Silver Pines wanted complete shoreline control and finally decided pretending otherwise wasted time. Heather pointed toward the rendering proudly. The unified waterfront project would dramatically increase regional property value while modernizing the entire lake district. Emma stared at the drawing. "You replaced our cabins with wine bars." "Mixed-use luxury spaces," Heather corrected immediately. I looked across the rendering quietly while wind pushed lake fog through the pines surrounding the shoreline. My father's fishing dock replaced by rooftop patios. Cabin 7 transformed into a valet parking lane. Family land reduced to branding opportunities for people who believed expensive stonework automatically outranked history. Heather folded her hands confidently. "The board is prepared to offer generous acquisition terms." "Not interested." Her smile tightened again. "Cole, refusing integration may create complications regarding community access." Oh, there it was finally. The real play. They believed controlling the gate gave them leverage over the cabins. Emma noticed it too. You mean the gate illegally blocking a private easement road? One of the board members shifted uncomfortably hearing that. Good sign. Somebody on the HOA finally started wondering whether their lawyers actually checked the records properly. Heather stayed composed though. Silver Pines maintains operational authority over subdivision infrastructure. No, I answered calmly. You maintain temporary usage authorization over Bennett Access Road through county easement allowance. Silence hit again. The consultant slowly rolled part of the rendering closed while watching Heather carefully now. Smart man. He finally realized this conversation involved actual deed law instead of HOA theater. Heather stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. The board can make life very difficult for the cabin district if necessary. I looked toward the entrance road, visible through gaps in the trees where traffic still crawled beneath the malfunctioning security gate hours later. Service trucks, landscaping crews, homeowners trying desperately to navigate the same 12-foot road Silver Pines suddenly pretended to own. Heather, I said quietly, you already made one mistake installing that gate before reviewing county title maps. Her jaw tightened instantly. And what mistake is that? Wind moved through the pine branches overhead, carrying the smell of gasoline and hot asphalt drifting from the backed-up entrance road below. Somewhere near the gate, another car horn echoed across the lake. You reminded everybody how dependent this subdivision is on a road your HOA never legally acquired. That landed harder than anything so far. One board member actually glanced toward the SUV like he suddenly wanted to leave. The consultant stopped pretending to study the rendering entirely. Heather kept her expression controlled, but panic finally touched her eyes for half a second. Tiny detail. Important detail. Because she still thought. This fight centered around cabin aesthetics and property values when the real issue involved infrastructure dependency hidden beneath county easement law. Emma leaned beside me, smiling slightly now. She understood exactly what was happening. Silver Pines built a gated luxury community around one dangerous assumption. That quiet landowners stop matching once wealthy people arrive. Around 1 o'clock, the sound of emergency sirens suddenly echoed from the highway entrance beyond the trees. An ambulance, stuck in traffic outside the HOA checkpoint. Every head turned immediately toward the gate road below us. Then came shouting. Loud shouting this time. Residents running from vehicles. Security guards waving frantically beside the stalled scanner system, while the ambulance tried squeezing through backed-up traffic trapped against the new steel barrier. Heather looked toward the noise, and for the first time all day, genuine fear crossed her face, completely unfiltered. Because suddenly the gate was no longer a luxury symbol. It was a liability sitting directly across a privately deeded road the HOA never actually controlled in the first place. The ambulance sat trapped behind 23 luxury SUVs because Heather Calloway wanted a gated entrance dramatic enough for real estate brochures. That reality spread through Silver Pines faster than any HOA newsletter ever could. I stood near the shoreline watching flashing emergency lights bounce through the pine trees, while security guards scrambled around the malfunctioning gate system, trying to clear enough space for paramedics to enter the subdivision. Residents abandoned vehicles in the middle of the road while shouting echoed across the lakefront beneath bright afternoon sunlight. Nothing exposes fake authority faster than infrastructure failing under pressure. Heather sprinted toward the entrance road with her board members following behind like assistants chasing a collapsing celebrity. The polished confidence disappeared completely now. No more luxury development speeches. No more controlled smiles. Just panic wrapped in expensive clothing. Emma watched the chaos quietly beside me while wind pushed ripples across the lake near the cabins. That gate lasted what? 8 hours. Long enough to create legal exposure, I answered calmly. Because the moment emergency response access becomes obstructed on a privately deeded easement road, county officials stop treating HOA games like harmless suburban politics. They start asking questions nobody in Silver Pines wanted answered publicly. Around 2:30, county sheriff vehicles arrived behind the ambulance, followed by a public safety inspector carrying a bright orange emergency access case. The second he stepped out and saw traffic completely jammed against the steel checkpoint barrier, his expression changed immediately. Good. Let county officials witness the HOA masterpiece personally. The gate motor kept grinding uselessly, while security contractors tried manually overriding the scanner system with keypads that already stopped responding under traffic overload. Cheap installation, rushed permits, expensive consequences. I walked slowly toward the entrance road with Emma beside me while pine needles cracked beneath our boots. The smell of hot asphalt and overheated engines filled the air now, mixing with lake water drifting through the trees from the shoreline below. Residents stood clustered beside luxury vehicles sweating in the afternoon heat, while the ambulance crew attempted to navigate through the bottleneck. The sheriff noticed me immediately. Deputy Nolan Pierce. Local guy? Smart enough to know which landowners matter around the Lake District. Cole, he called while surveying the traffic disaster surrounding the gate. This your road? Heather turned instantly after hearing that question. Perfect timing. I nodded once. Bennett Access Easement District. The public safety inspector looked toward Heather immediately. Your HOA installed this checkpoint? Heather tried recovering authority fast. Silver Pines implemented temporary security upgrades for community protection. The inspector stared at the backed-up ambulance for several long seconds before answering. Temporary or not, you obstructed emergency response access. Silence hit hard around the checkpoint after that. Residents listening nearby suddenly looked much less supportive of their luxury gate system. Funny how priorities shift once flashing lights arrive. Heather pointed toward the scanner equipment desperately. The system malfunctioned unexpectedly. The system should never have existed across a private easement route without county emergency access review. The inspector replied flatly. There it was. Publicly now. Private easement route. Several homeowners standing near the barricades immediately turned toward Heather with confused expressions. One older resident stepped forward holding a golf visor in one hand. Wait, the HOA does not own this road. Nobody answered immediately. Even the wind seemed quieter for a second, while sunlight reflected off rows of trapped luxury vehicles stretching toward the highway entrance. Emma almost smiled beside me, because this was the exact moment Silver Pines residents started understanding how fragile their expensive little paradise actually was. Heather attempted damage control quickly. The community maintains operational roadway authority through subdivision agreements. Operational usage is not deed ownership, I corrected calmly. The public safety inspector looked directly at Heather again. Did your board verify title control before construction? Another silence. Dangerous silence this time. Because no matter how expensive the neighborhood looked, county officials care about paperwork more than luxury branding once liability enters the conversation. One of the security contractors finally managed forcing the gate open halfway manually, while residents rushed vehicles through the checkpoint like evacuees escaping a wildfire zone. The ambulance squeezed past seconds later, heading deeper into Silver Pines beneath flashing lights reflecting off polished SUVs and decorative stone entry signs. The whole scene looked absurd now. A luxury community trapped by its own fake authority structure. Deputy Pierce walked over quietly while traffic started untangling slowly around us. You planning to file? He asked low enough only I could hear. Emma glanced toward me carefully. I looked down the road where the steel gate still sat bolted directly into concrete footings. Poured across Bennett land without easement authorization. Fresh concrete. Fresh liability. Fresh evidence. Already considering it, I answered calmly. Pierce nodded once like somebody who expected exactly that response. Smart deputy. Heather overheard enough to tense immediately. Cole, escalating this situation helps nobody. I almost laughed. You poured concrete barriers across my deeded roadway before sunrise. She stepped closer, lowering her voice urgently. The board acted in good faith. No, I answered quietly. The board acted like wealthy people stop needing permission once they hire enough consultants. That one landed hard. Several residents standing nearby heard it too. Good. Let them hear reality directly instead of another polished HOA newsletter explaining why ordinary rules magically stop applying to luxury subdivisions. Around 4 o'clock, county workers arrive carrying temporary safety barricades and inspection equipment. The public safety inspector already started documenting the checkpoint installation while photographing easement markers partially buried beneath the fresh concrete footings. Huge mistake. Those markers existed in county records going back 37 years. You do not casually bury infrastructure survey markers unless you enjoy explaining yourself inside county hearing rooms later. Emma watched inspectors measuring the gate placement while warm lake wind moved through the pines surrounding the road. "Think Heather finally understands?" she asked softly. I looked toward the HOA president standing alone beside the damaged checkpoint, while angry residents surrounded her with questions she clearly could not answer anymore. "Not yet," I said honestly. Right now she still thinks this is an embarrassing mistake. Then I glanced toward the buried easement markers beneath the gate foundation, where county inspectors continued taking photographs beneath the afternoon sun. She has not realized it is becoming a property law disaster. And judging by the growing line of county vehicles now entering Silver Pines for formal roadway review, that realization was going to arrive much faster than Heather Calloway expected. By sunset, Silver Pines residents stopped defending the gate entirely. Now they just wanted somebody to blame for the disaster sitting across their only entrance road. County inspectors placed bright orange warning markers around the concrete footings while traffic crawled through temporary barricades under sheriff supervision. The shiny black steel checkpoint Heather Calloway installed less than 24 hours earlier already looked abandoned and ridiculous beneath the pine trees. Luxury branding dies fast once county tape wraps around it. I sat outside cabin 2 sharpening fishing hooks beside the lake while evening wind rolled cold water smell through the shoreline district. Across the lake, the lights from Silver Pines reflected off calm water like nothing changed. But everything changed. You could feel it in the silence. Wealthy communities get unusually quiet once people realize expensive homes do not automatically protect them from legal mistakes. Emma walked down from the main road carrying a cardboard box filled with county archive copies. Evelyn dropped these off. I looked inside immediately. Original survey plats, easement transfer records, county maintenance agreements dating back to 1981. Evelyn Hart never did anything halfway. Retired title attorney or not, the woman still organized paperwork like she expected judges to appear out of the trees demanding evidence. Emma sat beside me on the dock while crickets started echoing through the reeds surrounding the shoreline. Heather held an emergency HOA meeting this afternoon. How bad? Emma laughed softly. Apparently, some homeowners discovered their mortgage paperwork references Bennett Access Easement District by name. That made sense. Banks actually read infrastructure documents before financing multi-million-dollar properties. Funny concept. Silver Pines residents spent years ignoring the legal framework beneath their subdivision because luxury landscaping distracted them from the reality underneath. One road, one easement, one family deed holding everything together. Around 8 o'clock, headlights appeared through the pines near the entrance lane. Heather again. Third visit today. Never a good sign when HOA presidents start driving directly to private cabins after dark. She parked beside cabin 6 and stepped out without the polished confidence she wore that morning. No trench coat now, just a navy sweater and exhaustion sitting visibly across her face. Good. Pressure reveals truth faster than arguments ever do. Heather walked toward the dock, carrying a leather folder pressed tightly against one arm. "We need to talk." Emma stood immediately. "That sounds serious." Heather ignored the comment completely. She looked past us toward the lake where moonlight reflected softly across still water beyond the cabins. "The board is prepared to negotiate." There it was. The first honest sentence she said all day. I closed the tackle box calmly. "About what exactly?" "The roadway issue." "You mean the roadway your HOA illegally blocked with a steel gate?" Her jaw tightened immediately. Even tired, Heather still hated direct wording. People addicted to authority prefer softer language. Community enhancement, access management, unified development planning, anything except the truth sitting directly in front of them. Heather opened the folder revealing draft agreements clipped together with yellow legal tabs. Silver Pines is willing to purchase permanent easement control from the Bennett estate. Emma almost laughed out loud hearing that. "Now you want to buy it?" Heather kept her eyes on me. The board underestimated the complexity of the title structure. Translation. Their lawyers finally visited the county archive basement and discovered Silver Pines never legally acquired roadway ownership during subdivision development. Huge oversight. Catastrophic oversight now that emergency access liability entered the conversation publicly. I flipped through the draft offer slowly while Lake Wind moved across the dock beneath us. The number attached nearly made me whistle. $22 million for roadway transfer rights and cabin acquisition options. Expensive panic. You really want the cabins gone? I said quietly. Heather looked toward the shoreline properties stretching beneath the pines. Silver Pines cannot fully modernize the waterfront district while those structures remain independent. There it was again. Not land use. Not safety. Image control. The cabins embarrassed her because they reminded residents the lake existed before the luxury subdivision arrived. History ruins exclusivity marketing every single time. I handed the folder back. Not interested. Heather stared at me like somebody watching a life raft float away during a storm. Cole, this situation is becoming unstable. No, I corrected calmly. This situation is becoming honest. Silence settled around the dock while water tapped softly against the old wooden supports beneath us. Somewhere across the lake, a boat engine hummed faintly through the darkness. Heather looked exhausted now. Smaller somehow. The gate fiasco cracked the illusion surrounding her authority faster than she expected. The homeowners are furious, she admitted quietly. Some residents are threatening lawsuits. Against who? She did not answer immediately. Did not need to. Emma crossed her arms beside me while moonlight reflected across the waterline behind us. You built a luxury subdivision around infrastructure you never controlled. Heather rubbed one hand against her forehead slowly. The developers assured us the roadway issue was settled decades ago. Developers disappear after projects finish, I answered. Easement law does not. That landed hard enough. Heather looked away toward the trees surrounding the shoreline. Good, because the real problem finally reached her now. Silver Pines was never truly independent. The entire gated community depended on continued access permission through Bennett land. If county easement enforcement escalated formally, every homeowner inside the subdivision suddenly faced infrastructure uncertainty attached directly to their property values. And nothing terrifies wealthy neighborhoods faster than unstable access rights. Heather lowered her voice carefully. What exactly do you want? Another honest question. Finally, I looked across the cabins stretching quietly beside the lake beneath moonlight and pine shadows. Family land. Family history. 40 years of memories developers tried reducing into a non-compliant shoreline district. I want the gate removed, I said calmly. I want every HOA notice issued against the cabins revoked publicly. Heather stayed silent. And I want Silver Pines residents informed exactly who owns the road leading into their subdivision. That last part visibly hurt her more than the money. Because power inside communities like Silver Pines depends entirely on perception. Heather sold certainty, exclusivity, control. The second residents realized their entire luxury lifestyle depended on one quiet landowner beside the lake. The illusion shattered permanently. She closed the folder slowly while wind moved through the pine trees overhead. The board will never agree to that. I nodded once toward the dark outline of the gate barely visible through the trees near the entrance road. Then the county easement review happening tomorrow morning is going to become very uncomfortable for everybody involved. Heather followed my eyes toward the road, and for the first time since this started, she looked genuinely afraid. Because suddenly the gate was not just a failed HOA project anymore. It was evidence sitting directly across land Silver Pines never legally controlled. And by sunrise, county officials were going to start measuring every inch of it. County survey trucks rolled into Silver Pines at exactly 7 o'clock the next morning, while most residents still stood outside holding coffee cups and staring at the checkpoint like people waking up beside a crashed airplane. The steel gate remained half open after emergency crews disabled the scanner system overnight, but the damage was already done. Orange County markers surrounded the concrete footings while bright survey tape stretched across both sides of Bennett Access Road beneath tall pine trees dripping with early morning fog. Nothing destroys suburban confidence faster than official measuring equipment. I watched from the porch of Cabin 3 while crews unloaded tripods, transit levels, and boundary scanners onto the roadside gravel. The sound of metal equipment clicking into place echoed softly through the cold air beside the lake. Emma stepped outside carrying 2 coffees and handed me one without speaking. She already knew this morning mattered. Once county surveyors start documenting easement violations publicly, the conversation changes permanently from HOA politics into legal exposure. Across the entrance road, Clusters of Silver Pines residents gathered beside luxury SUVs, whispering nervously, while workers in reflective county jackets placed fresh stakes directly through the landscaped flower beds surrounding the HOA gate. That part almost made me smile. Heather spent years obsessing over decorative appearances. Now county crews were hammering fluorescent orange markers through her luxury entrance design before breakfast. Around 7:30, Evelyn Hart arrived driving her ancient green station wagon loaded with archive tubes and county plats stacked across the passenger seat. She climbed out wearing the same brown leather satchel she carried during title disputes 30 years ago. Retired or not, Evelyn still looked like somebody capable of dismantling bad paperwork professionally before lunch. "Morning, Cole," she called while surveying the checkpoint chaos around us. "Looks expensive." Emma laughed softly beside me. Evelyn handed me a rolled survey copy secured with red tape. Original Bennett Access Easement Survey, 1981. Signed county approval seals still visible beneath decades of fading ink. The document showed everything clearly. Bennett family ownership extending beneath the entire roadway corridor connecting Silver Pines to County Route 16. Permanent county usage authorization. Temporary subdivision access allowance. No ownership transfer recorded anywhere. Not once. Heather Calloway arrived minutes later surrounded by 3 board members and 2 different attorneys carrying leather portfolios. That told me everything immediately. When organizations hire additional lawyers overnight, panic already entered the building. Heather noticed Evelyn beside me and visibly stiffened. Good reaction. Evelyn Hart terrified developers for decades because she actually read infrastructure filings instead of trusting summary reports prepared by consultants. One of the county surveyors approached carrying a digital tablet while morning sunlight started cutting through the fog above the trees. "Mr. Bennett, that is me." He pointed toward the gate foundation where workers already chipped away fresh concrete around buried easement markers. "We confirmed unauthorized obstruction placement across deeded roadway access." Heather stepped forward immediately. Silver Pines acted under good faith operational authority assumptions. The surveyor barely looked at her. Operational access does not supersede title ownership. Another clean public correction. Several nearby residents definitely heard that one. More whispering started near the parked SUVs lining the roadside. Wealthy homeowners suddenly discovering their subdivision relied entirely on somebody outside the HOA structure created the kind of tension country clubs never prepare people for emotionally. Evelyn opened her satchel slowly and removed another folder thick enough to stop a bullet. "Actually," she said calmly, "the issue extends beyond unauthorized obstruction." Every head turned toward her instantly. Even Heather looked nervous now. Evelyn handed documents directly to the county surveyor. Silver Pines expanded utility conduits 18 feet beyond permitted roadway maintenance boundaries during Phase 3 construction 6 years ago. Silence hit hard again. The surveyor flipped through the paperwork while another county worker walked toward the buried utility corridor beside the gate entrance. Heather looked stunned. "That cannot be correct." Evelyn smiled slightly. Dangerous smile. County Archive, page 47. Supplemental conduit expansion permit denied twice before installation proceeded anyway. Emma looked at me beside the porch railing. "Oh, this just became catastrophic." She was right. Because unauthorized utility expansion across deeded easement land opened entirely different legal exposure categories. Not HOA fines. Not neighborhood disputes. Infrastructure liability. Expensive infrastructure liability. Residents standing near the checkpoint started approaching closer now, while county crews uncovered additional buried markers beneath decorative landscaping stones installed around the entrance. One homeowner, wearing tennis clothes, finally spoke up loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Are you telling us the HOA built all this on private land?" Nobody answered immediately. The silence answered well enough on its own. Heather tried regaining control fast. Silver Pines remains fully operational while legal clarification proceeds. Evelyn adjusted her glasses calmly. "Actually, county easement enforcement may require temporary roadway usage review pending compliance inspection." That landed like a grenade without noise. Residents started talking all at once now. Questions everywhere. Temporary roadway review. Compliance inspection. Utility violations. Easement dependency. The illusion cracked completely in real time beneath the pine trees. I watched Heather realize it happening second by second. The HOA president, who spent years controlling architectural colors and mailbox regulations, suddenly could not guarantee residents permanent access certainty to their own subdivision. Around 9:15, the lead county surveyor approached me carrying finalized inspection notes clipped to a yellow legal pad. "Mr. Bennett, due to unauthorized construction across the easement district, the county recommends immediate temporary access enforcement review until all obstruction and utility compliance matters are resolved." There it was finally. Official. Public. Legal. Emma exhaled slowly beside me while wind moved through the trees carrying lake air across the road. The surveyor continued carefully. "As deed holder, enforcement activation would fall under your discretion pending county coordination." Heather looked physically sick hearing that sentence. Because now the truth stood fully exposed beneath bright morning sunlight and county paperwork. The road never belonged to Silver Pines. The HOA only borrowed access through Bennett land for years while pretending luxury gates and decorative landscaping somehow changed ownership reality. And the worst part for Heather was simple. The man she spent years trying to push out of the Lake District now held the legal authority to determine whether her entire subdivision stayed connected to the outside world at all. The county enforcement notice changed Silver Pines faster than any storm ever could. By late afternoon, real estate agents stopped scheduling waterfront showings entirely. Contractors abandoned half-finished landscaping projects near the Marina District. Delivery companies delayed service routes until roadway access status became legally stable. Wealthy homeowners who spent years obsessing over lake views suddenly gathered beside mailboxes discussing easement law like amateur infrastructure attorneys. Amazing transformation. Fear teaches technical vocabulary very quickly. I sat outside cabin 8 repairing an old cedar railing while Emma read updated county notifications aloud from her tablet. The lake behind us looked calm beneath soft gray clouds drifting low across the valley, but the road leading into Silver Pines felt like a community preparing for evacuation. Every vehicle entering or leaving the subdivision slowed near the checkpoint now, where county markers and temporary barricades surrounded the dismantled gate system. The black steel barrier still stood crooked across Bennett Access Road like a monument to expensive arrogance. "Listen to this," Emma said while scrolling through another resident forum post. "Multiple homeowners are demanding immediate board resignations." I kept sanding the railing quietly while cedar dust drifted into the breeze. "Good." One resident called Heather a suburban dictator with landscaping privileges. That actually made me laugh. Around 4:30, county utility crews arrived carrying bright orange survey flags and underground scanning equipment. More trouble for Silver Pines. The moment infrastructure mapping teams appear unexpectedly, somebody already discovered records that should have stayed buried. Evelyn Hart walked down from cabin 3 holding another stack of county plats beneath one arm, while wind rolled across the shoreline, carrying the smell of lake water and fresh-cut grass. "The utility conduit issue is worse than expected," she said calmly. Emma lowered the tablet immediately. "How bad?" Evelyn adjusted her glasses before answering. Silver Pines installed fiber, water, and drainage expansions directly across. Restricted easement soil without updated county authorization. I leaned back against the railing slowly. "All 3. Evelyn nodded once. "Looks like the developers treated Bennett Access District like permanent subdivision property for years." That explained everything. Luxury developments get careless after enough time passes without challenge. Temporary permissions slowly become assumed ownership inside people's heads until somebody finally reads the original documents again. Across the entrance road, homeowners started gathering near the county utility crews while workers painted fresh boundary lines across sections of pavement using fluorescent orange chalk. Public infrastructure markings. Never a reassuring sight for property investors. Around sunset, Heather Calloway arrived alone this time. No board members. No lawyers. No polished presentation folders. Just exhaustion sitting heavily across her face while she walked slowly down the gravel path toward the cabins beneath fading evening light. Emma noticed immediately. "She looks terrible." Heather stopped near the shoreline without speaking for several seconds while lake wind moved through the pine branches overhead. The silence between us felt different now. Less arrogant. More desperate. The county is considering temporary access suspension during the utility review, she finally said quietly. There it was. The nightmare scenario. Silver Pines residents trapped behind legal uncertainty because the HOA treated easement law like decorative paperwork instead of infrastructure reality. I nodded once. That tends to happen when unauthorized construction spreads across private access corridors. Heather rubbed one hand against her forehead slowly. The homeowners are panicking. They should probably panic at the developers who lied to them. She looked toward the road where county survey lights now glowed through the trees beside the damaged checkpoint. The board never knew the easement restrictions extended this far. That is because nobody bothered checking. Another silence settled over the shoreline while waves tapped softly against the dock pilings beneath us. Then Heather said something I honestly never expected to hear from her. I made a mistake. Emma nearly dropped the tablet hearing that sentence. Heather stared out across the lake while sunset reflected gold across the waterline behind the cabins. I thought controlling the shoreline meant controlling the community. I looked toward Silver Pines rising beyond the trees where luxury homes sat perfectly aligned above a road none of them truly owned. That is the problem with communities built entirely around image, I answered quietly. Eventually reality shows up underneath the landscaping. She actually nodded at that. Small moment. Honest moment. Then her expression hardened again slightly. The board still believes you are escalating this unnecessarily. I almost smiled hearing that. Heather, your HOA buried county easement markers beneath decorative stonework and built infrastructure expansions across restricted access land. She stayed silent. You escalated this the second you poured concrete across my road. The county utility scanners suddenly beeped loudly near the checkpoint while workers gathered around fresh pavement markings beneath portable floodlights. One of the crews started placing temporary excavation notices directly beside the HOA entrance sign. Residents watching nearby looked horrified. Good. Let them finally understand infrastructure matters more than decorative fountains and luxury clubhouse wine tastings. Heather followed my eyes toward the growing cluster of county workers near the road. What happens if the county suspends access? I answered honestly because sugarcoating reality no longer helped anybody. Then Silver Pines becomes legally unstable until every easement violation gets corrected. Her face lost color immediately. Because legally unstable subdivisions terrify banks, insurers, contractors, and real estate markets all at once. Property values collapse fast when infrastructure uncertainty enters public records. Emma stepped closer beside me while the evening wind carried cold lake air across the shoreline. The cabins survived here before Silver Pines existed, she said quietly. We are not the ones in danger. Heather looked at the 15 cabins stretching beneath the pines beside the water. Old wood, old docks, old deeds. History standing calmly beside a luxury subdivision, suddenly discovering its foundations were never as permanent as advertised. Somewhere near the checkpoint, construction equipment started cutting into asphalt beneath bright county floodlights. The sound echoed across the lake like distant machinery tearing open something buried long ago. Heather listened to it for several seconds before speaking again. If the board agrees to your conditions, will you stop the enforcement review? I looked toward the road where county crews now exposed utility conduit lines running illegally beneath Bennett Access District. Then I looked back at Heather Calloway standing beside the cabins she spent years trying to erase from the shoreline. That decision stopped belonging to me the moment county inspectors found your buried infrastructure. The truth hit her visibly. Because Silver Pines was no longer fighting one quiet landowner beside the lake anymore. Now they were fighting the consequences of years spent pretending ownership and authority meant the same thing. And under the floodlights glowing across Bennett Access Road that night, the difference between those two things finally became impossible for anybody in Silver Pines to ignore. The first moving truck left Silver Pines 2 days later, just after sunrise. Not because somebody wanted a new view. Because banks started asking questions. I stood beside the dock outside Cabin 5 watching a white contractor truck crawl slowly down Bennett Access Road, past county excavation equipment and temporary utility barriers, while fog drifted low across the lake beneath pale morning light. The atmosphere around the subdivision felt completely different now. Not luxurious anymore. Nervous. Every conversation happening near the entrance road carried the same tone wealthy communities use when people suddenly realize expensive homes do not guarantee permanent stability. County crews spent all night exposing unauthorized utility conduits buried beneath the roadway corridor. By morning, sections of asphalt sat peeled open beside fluorescent orange markings stretching through the Silver Pines entrance like surgical cuts, exposing hidden damage underneath. Emma walked down carrying fresh coffee while reading local news updates from her phone. 3 property listings got pulled overnight. I nodded slowly. Lenders probably froze review approvals. She looked toward the road where county inspectors already photographed exposed drainage lines beside the dismantled gate foundation. Heather destroyed her own neighborhood faster than anyone else ever could. The sad part was she almost sounded disappointed saying it. Silver Pines residents were not evil people. Most just bought into the illusion developers sold them. Perfect waterfront living. Exclusive community identity. Permanent property value growth. Nobody told them the entire subdivision rested on temporary easement permissions crossing family land. The HOA spent years insulting publicly. Around 8:30, county hearing notices started appearing on homeowner mailboxes throughout Silver Pines. Formal infrastructure compliance review. Public attendance required. That changed the atmosphere immediately. Residents stopped whispering after that. Now they openly argued beside driveways and sidewalks while contractors removed decorative entrance stonework surrounding the failed security gate. Luxury landscaping crews literally dismantling Heather Calloway's image project piece by piece beneath county supervision. Perfect symbolism. Evelyn Hart arrived carrying another thick archive tube under one arm, while survey workers installed temporary roadway warning signs near the checkpoint. The county expanded the review, she said calmly. Environmental drainage violations connected to the utility expansion surfaced this morning. Emma stared at her. There is more. Evelyn almost smiled. There is always more when developers start ignoring easement restrictions. That turned out to be painfully accurate. By noon, county engineers discovered Silver Pines redirected storm runoff beneath the roadway corridor years earlier to create additional buildable waterfront lots near the marina section. Unauthorized drainage rerouting. More infrastructure violations. More liability. More evidence. The subdivision spent years pretending Bennett Access District belonged to them permanently. Heather finally called for an emergency community assembly inside the Silver Pines clubhouse around 3 in the afternoon. Residents packed the building before the meeting even started. Angry homeowners filled every seat while additional groups stood beside windows overlooking the lake where the 15 cabins remained quiet beneath towering pine trees. Funny contrast. The cabins everybody wanted removed now looked like the most stable structures anywhere near the water. Emma and I stayed near the back while Heather stood at the front beside exhausted attorneys and nervous board members who suddenly looked terrified of eye contact. The room buzzed with tension sharp enough to taste. Silver Pines remains operational, Heather announced carefully into the microphone. Immediate shouting interrupted her. Our property values are collapsing. You told us the HOA controlled the infrastructure. Did you even verify ownership before installing the gate? Why are county crews digging up the entrance road? Heather tried regaining order repeatedly while attorneys whispered frantically beside her. But the illusion was gone now. Residents no longer saw confident HOA leadership. They saw liability wearing expensive clothes. Then somebody near the front stood up holding printed county documents. This says the road belongs to Cole Bennett. Silence dropped instantly across the clubhouse. Hundreds of people turning simultaneously toward me, standing quietly near the back wall beside Emma. The feeling almost reminded me of storms rolling across the lake before thunder hits. Pressure building visibly through the air. Heather looked at me like somebody watching the final support beam crack beneath a collapsing building. The roadway operates through historical easement complexity, she answered weakly. Wrong phrasing. Residents hated weak phrasing now. Do we own access to our homes or not? Another homeowner shouted. No answer came fast enough. Because legally, the truth sounded terrifying. Silver Pines homeowners owned their houses, but the subdivision itself depended entirely on continued lawful access through Bennett easement land. The county attorney finally stood from the side table near the windows and cleared his throat loudly enough to silence the room. At this time, he announced carefully, County officials are evaluating whether unauthorized infrastructure expansion materially violated access agreements attached to the subdivision development charter. You could literally hear panic spreading through the clubhouse after that sentence. Mortgage concerns, insurance fears, property access uncertainty. Everything wealthy communities spend fortunes avoiding emotionally arrived all at once. Heather gripped the podium harder while residents argued openly around the room now. One board member quietly left through a side exit without speaking. Another stared directly at the floor like a man calculating retirement options. Then Heather made the mistake that finally destroyed her completely. She pointed directly toward me in front of everyone. This situation escalated because Mr. Bennett refused to cooperate with modernization efforts benefiting the entire community. Wrong move. Immediate outrage exploded through the room. You blamed him. You built a gate on his land. You told us the cabins were violating HOA policy. They are not even in the HOA. The question slammed into her nonstop now. Emma looked at me quietly beside the back wall, while residents turned fully against the board in real time beneath bright clubhouse lights. Heather tried speaking twice before the crowd drowned her out completely. Then one older resident near the front said the sentence that finally ended Silver Pines as Heather envisioned it. The cabins were here first. Silence followed that statement. Heavy silence. Honest silence. Because suddenly everyone understood the truth hidden beneath years of luxury marketing. The subdivision never controlled the Lake District. It grew around it, borrowed access from it, depended on it completely while pretending otherwise. Outside the clubhouse windows, evening sunlight reflected softly across the water beside 15 quiet cabins standing calmly beneath the pine trees, while county survey markers glowed bright. Orange beside the road leading every resident home. 3 months later, the steel gate was gone so completely, you could barely tell it ever existed except for the faint rectangle of newer asphalt crossing Bennett Access Road near the entrance to Silver Pines. County crews finished removing the last unauthorized infrastructure markers in early September, while cold lake winds started carrying the first hints of fall through the pine trees surrounding the shoreline. The subdivision looked quieter now, smaller somehow. Like the entire place finally understood, it was built beside the lake instead of above it. I stood outside cabin 1 before sunrise holding a coffee cup while mist drifted slowly across calm water reflecting pale blue morning light. The 15 cabins sat peacefully beneath the trees exactly where they had stood for decades. No luxury expansion banners. No security checkpoints. No HOA notices taped to mailboxes. Just cedar walls, old docks, and the soft sound of waves touching shoreline rocks beneath the cold morning air. Emma stepped onto the porch beside me, wearing an oversized flannel jacket, while geese crossed low above the lake heading south for winter. "You hear about Heather?" she asked quietly. I nodded once. Everybody around the county heard eventually. The Silver Pines board dissolved entirely after the infrastructure hearings concluded. Multiple civil lawsuits followed. The original developers settled privately with several homeowners before county access litigation expanded further. Heather Calloway resigned publicly 2 weeks after the hearings ended and moved out before October. Last I heard, she took a consulting job somewhere near Phoenix far away from lakes, easements, and angry homeowners who finally learned how property law actually works. Funny ending for somebody obsessed with controlling shorelines. Emma leaned against the porch railing looking towards Silver Pines visible through the pines across the entrance road. The subdivision almost feels normal again. She was right. County restructuring forced major changes. Public roadway transparency disclosures. Easement education notices for homeowners. Permanent restrictions. Preventing any future obstruction across Bennett Access District. Even the new neighborhood signage looked different now. Smaller. Simpler. No giant luxury branding slogans promising exclusive waterfront living. Just practical county markers identifying roadway access and shoreline preservation zones. Reality finally replaced marketing. Around 8:30, a county maintenance truck rolled calmly down the road, carrying fresh gravel for the shoreline pull-off near cabin 12. The driver waved while passing. Residents waved more now too. Funny change. For years, most Silver Pines homeowners barely acknowledged the cabin district except when complaining about aesthetics during HOA meetings. Now people stopped regularly beside the docks asking questions about fishing conditions, storm runoff levels, and local lake history. Turns out communities behave differently once they stop pretending infrastructure magically maintains itself without the people protecting it. Evelyn Hart arrived shortly before lunch, carrying sandwiches and a thick envelope stamped with official county seals. Final recording confirmation, she announced while dropping the envelope onto the picnic table beside the dock. Emma opened it immediately. Permanent protected shoreline status. Bennett Cabin District officially classified as historic lakeside property under county preservation review. No future annexation attempts. No forced integration. No development absorption authority. Permanent. Quiet word. Powerful word. I sat there for a moment listening to the wind move through the trees while sunlight reflected across the water beyond the cabins. My grandfather would have appreciated the irony. The family spent decades simply trying to maintain a peaceful stretch of shoreline, while wealthy developers kept trying to transform it into a luxury postcard. In the end, the old cabins outlasted the entire illusion built around them. Around late afternoon, several Silver Pines residents gathered near the shoreline access trail, holding fishing poles and folding chairs while children skipped rocks beside the waterline near Cabin 7. No private security guards. No luxury gate systems. No HOA. Volunteers measuring grass height or complaining about community image consistency. Just people using the lake normally again. Honestly, a retired homeowner named Walter stopped near the dock while carrying a tackle box and looked toward the cabins thoughtfully. "You know," he said quietly, "I spent 5 years driving this road without ever realizing who actually owned it." I smiled slightly. Most people never think about roads until something blocks them. Walter laughed softly before heading toward the shoreline with the others. Emma sat beside me watching sunlight turn gold across the lake while the subdivision beyond the trees settled peacefully into evening. "Do you ever regret not selling when they offered all that money?" she asked. I looked toward Bennett Access Road stretching calmly through the pines where traffic now moved freely without checkpoints, scanners, or decorative stone monuments pretending ownership changed because wealthy people voted on it. "No," I answered honestly. People like Heather thought land only mattered when somebody could profit from it. The wind shifted gently across the water, carrying cedar smell and distant boat engines through the cooling air. But some places matter because they remember who was here before the money arrived. Emma stayed quiet after that while sunset spread slowly across the lake beyond the docks. Somewhere farther down the shoreline, children laughed near the water while an old fisherman untangled a line beneath the trees. Normal sounds. Honest sounds. The kind wealthy developments spend millions trying to manufacture artificially before eventually discovering authenticity cannot be purchased through landscaping budgets and HOA authority votes. As darkness settled over the lake, the lights from Silver Pines reflected softly across calm water beside the cabins. Different now. Less arrogant somehow. The subdivision finally understood something important after all the lawsuits, hearings, and county inspections ended. The cabins never threatened the community. The cabins anchored it. And the road Heather Calloway tried claiming for herself turned out to be the same road quietly holding the entire illusion together the whole time.